Nnamdi Kanu has formally filed an appeal challenging the life sentence handed down to him by the Federal High Court in Abuja in November 2025. This is one of the most significant legal developments in Nigeria in recent times, and it has once again brought the entire country's attention back to a case that has been at the center of national conversation for nearly a decade. If you are just hearing about this for the first time or you have been following this story from the very beginning, this video is going to give you everything you need to understand what is happening, why it matters, and where things are likely to go from here. Let us start from the beginning. Nnamdi Kanu is the leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, commonly known as IPOB. He is a man who has inspired deep loyalty among millions of people, particularly in the southeastern part of Nigeria, while at the same time drawing the strong opposition of the federal government. To understand why his case has become so important, you need to understand the history behind it. The idea of Biafra is not something that started with Nnamdi Kanu. It goes back to one of the darkest chapters in Nigerian history. Between 1967 and 1970, Nigeria fought a brutal civil war after the southeastern region declared itself the Independent Republic of Biafra. That war ended with reunification, but the wounds it left behind never fully healed. The feelings of political marginalization, economic exclusion, and cultural disrespect that many people in the Southeast carried with them did not disappear when the war ended. They stayed beneath the surface for decades, quietly shaping the way millions of Nigerians in that region viewed their relationship with the federal government. Nnamdi Kanu was born in Abia State in southeastern Nigeria and later moved to the United Kingdom, where he became one of the most vocal advocates for Biafran independence. He founded and operated Radio Biafra, a broadcast platform that reached audiences across Nigeria and among the Nigerian diaspora around the world. His style was direct, passionate, and deliberately provocative. His supporters saw him as a courageous voice speaking uncomfortable truths about the treatment of Igbo people within the Nigerian state. His critics, particularly in the federal government, saw his broadcasts as dangerous, inflammatory, and threatening to national unity. This disagreement about the nature of his activities would eventually become the foundation of the legal battle that has now consumed years of his life and captured the attention of millions of people. His legal troubles with the Nigerian government began in 2015, when he was arrested in Lagos on charges that included treasonable felony and unlawful assembly. He spent over a year in detention before a federal high court granted him bail in 2017 under conditions that many observers described as unusually strict. He was prohibited from attending public gatherings of more than 10 people and was restricted from granting media interviews. Despite these conditions, he continued engaging with supporters and the media, which the government later argued amounted to a breach of his bail terms. Then in September 2017, the Nigerian army launched a military operation in the southeast called Operation Python Dance. Following this operation, Nnamdi Kanu disappeared entirely from public view. For months, nobody could confirm where he was or whether he was safe. He eventually resurfaced outside Nigeria and spent several years abroad continuing his broadcasts and political activities, while the Nigerian government maintained its legal case against him. In that same period, the federal government secured a court order designating IPOB as a terrorist organization. That single decision dramatically raised the stakes of everything connected to Kanu and the movement he led. Then in June 2021 came the announcement that shocked many people. The Nigerian government declared that Nnamdi Kanu had been returned to Nigeria through what officials described as a carefully coordinated international security operation. He was immediately taken into custody by the Department of State Services and formally recharged with terrorism offenses. The government presented his return as a major achievement. His supporters and many international observers saw it very differently. Questions quickly emerged about how exactly he ended up back in Nigeria. His legal team argued that he had been unlawfully abducted from Kenya in a manner that violated both Nigerian and international law. A Kenyan court later ruled that his removal from Kenyan territory had indeed been unlawful. The United Kingdom government expressed concern about his case, given that he holds British citizenship. British parliamentarians raised questions about his welfare and the conditions of his detention. All of these international complications added layers of complexity to a case that was already deeply contentious. Despite all of this, Nigerian courts pressed forward with the trial. The trial itself stretched over a long period and included numerous sessions filled with legal arguments, procedural disputes, and moments that drew significant public attention. One of the most controversial decisions during the trial came when the court ruled that Kanu had waived his right to present a full defense. This happened after his legal team declined to formally open the defense case within the timeframe set by the judge. The court ruled that the right to present a defense had been forfeited as a result. Legal analysts who followed the case closely immediately noted that this ruling would almost certainly become a major issue in any appeal, because the right to present a defense is considered one of the most fundamental elements of a fair trial under both Nigerian law and international human rights standards. Another moment that generated strong reactions was when the judge ordered that proceedings continue in Kanu's absence following what the court described as disruptive conduct in the courtroom. The right of an accused person to be present at their own trial is a foundational principle of criminal justice. When that right is overridden, appellate courts typically scrutinize the decision very carefully. On November 20, 2025, the Federal High Court in Abuja delivered its judgment. The court found Nnamdi Kanu guilty on multiple counts related to terrorism and the leadership of a proscribed organization. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment, the most severe penalty available under the relevant provisions of Nigerian law short of the death penalty. The reaction was immediate and deeply divided. In parts of southeastern Nigeria, there were protests, roadblocks, and demonstrations by supporters who rejected the verdict as unjust and politically motivated. Markets and businesses in some areas shut down as residents expressed their grief and anger. Security forces were deployed across several locations. Government officials and their supporters in other parts of the country described the judgment as a vindication of Nigeria's legal system and a warning to those who would threaten national security. Internationally, human rights organizations raised concerns about the fairness of the trial. Amnesty International called on Nigerian authorities to ensure that Kanu's right to appeal was fully respected. British officials reiterated their concern for his welfare. Diaspora groups around the world issued statements condemning the verdict. Now the case has moved into its next chapter. Nnamdi Kanu's legal team has formally filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal containing more than 20 grounds on which they argue the Federal High Court judgment should be set aside. At the heart of the appeal is the argument that the trial was fundamentally flawed and failed to meet the standards required for a fair criminal proceeding. The defense is arguing that the denial of the right to present a full defense was a reversible error that cannot be overlooked. They are challenging the way certain evidence was admitted and evaluated. They are raising again the question of whether the circumstances of his return to Nigeria were so unlawful that the court should never have exercised jurisdiction over him in the first place. They are questioning whether proceedings conducted in his absence were legally justified. And they are arguing that even if all the evidence is considered, it does not meet the legal threshold required to prove terrorism under Nigerian law. The appeal asks the Court of Appeal to set aside the conviction in